Star Trek Picard Season 3, Episode 8, Surrender is here, and wow, I am full of anxiety and high tension, and I need a beer. Pop Tot, what did you think of this episode, Surrender?
As you all know, we typically watch these once or twice for sure. The first time I was reaching for some Prozac or something. I needed a stiff drink.
Yeah.
It was rough.
Everything has consequences.
Consequences like saving your life.
Commander,
My name is 7 of 9.
The second time I knew it was coming, so I was a little more laid back and I was able to pick up on things. But it was a really good, well-balanced episode in the stark bleakness, dire consequences. And then there was some payoffs there. And I really enjoyed this episode overall. But I got to tell you, going into that first 15, 20, maybe 30 minutes, I was like, oh my God, it was just, I was on the edge of my seat. I had beads of sweat going down my head. It was rough.
Last week's review, I had a part that I cut out where I talked about there was a part in this episode in Surrender that feels like a horror movie. And we see that in the beginning of this episode when she's basically sending a message to the crew to get Jack and going and just deck by deck killing people, and you see the door shut and hear the screaming, and I'm like, what the hell is going on?
With nowhere left to run.
Then there's a part a little bit further on in the episode where she basically gets them into an execution line, and I'm like, I'm sitting there watching this, and she's going around, and it's when Jack failed to telepathically connect to a guy and take over the ship.
And I'm like, Bajoran tactical officer.
And I'm like, she's not going to go execute somebody. They're not going to do that. And then she ends up shooting and killing the bald Vulcan. And I was like, what the hell is going on?
That is wrong what you did.
It was pretty tense.
Like you said, the balance ends up coming because the back half, when that tide starts to turn with Worf saving Deanna and Riker, you get some more layers of jokes and light humor. The music kind of uplifts and you're like, oh, okay. Yeah, wow, this is a crazy episode.
Yeah, so, I mean, the premise is Vadic's got the bridge. She's got control of the ship. You've got pockets of characters. You got Jack, Beverly, Picard in the med bay. You've got Riker. You've got really touching moments with Riker and Troy in a cell on the Shrike. They're basically vetting their feelings of what happened, how he became distant.
I hadn't felt that since.
Worf saves the day. You get a little bit of that Klingon music in the background, you know, and but Vadic's got the bridge crew lined up, and Jack utilizes this power that's coming out more and more, the red eye thing. And then you've got LaForge and his daughter with Data or Lore down in the engineering area. So you got all these little pockets of characters, and they all start to verge in that second half of that episode. The first payoff to me was Worf saving Troy and Riker, and then that light moment where they're hugging him and he has to tell them, you know,
one's personal space is a right.
And goes into his feelings about him and Troy, and Riker's like, are we really doing this right now? And it was pretty funny.
He's like almost like preferring the torture.
Yeah.
Is this a rescue mission or a continuation of the torture?
There's this cute little moment where Troy was telling Riker that she knew right away it was a changeling, but he did have his charm, and he goes, how charming? He goes, well,
how charming.
Good in bed, bad at pizza.
So just like me.
I feel like every time there's a great moment in this show, it becomes like a top 5 moment in all of Star Trek. And
it was my last connection to him. And you tried to erase it.
Not erase it. Take it.
Like that moment between them was like a top 5 moment between them. And it was really touching. And to hear a couple of parents go through grief as they are, and it was just so sad. And
it did not at one time feel superficial.
No. And the acting again this season, hats off to the directors and obviously the writing for getting excellent performances out of everybody.
All I wanted was to see your face. I missed loving you, Imzadi.
Oh, you are clearly concussed.
Oh, definitely.
I think the one thing I was on the fence about that really made me turn around was what they did with Data. I was not a huge fan of them bringing back Data again. I just was like, oh, we're going down this route again. And him going against Lore, and he was kind of, I'm like, Data's too smart to sit here and just get his ass kicked by Lore.
Right. Yeah.
And the way they did it with him basically giving his member berries out, these are, here's the cards, here's Spot
the cat, right?
Oh my God. And it was so touching. And then, you realize Data is still Data. He was the smarter one than Lore, and Lore's ambition got him. Then we unlocked this Data that we've never really seen before.
No.
And I loved it.
I feel
the entire time, and this is going to make you laugh or bring you back, the entire time when they're walking down the hallway and they're talking and they're making these jokes, it brought me back to Psych with Gus and Sean. And there's even that time where Gus has the visor on, Geordi's visor on, and it brought me back to the original best friend group. And I'm
the
sure
one where Sean was wearing the Battlestar Galactica helmet. Yeah.
And I was just like, it brought me right back.
Before you even ask, that's probably one of my 2 or 3 favorite scenes is this touching moment between Geordi and Data saying,
the one thing that will remain forever constant is my gratitude for your friendship.
Like I just said before, I feel like you can pull a top 5 performance out of any one of these scenes. Whatever you think of this season, the overarching plot, which some people aren't a big fan of, you can't dismiss. The character moments are so good. Just continue to be so good.
My number one scene is them all sitting around the table and then playing classic Next Generation music. I got emotional, teary-eyed. They're all sitting around these really cool jackets.
Yeah.
Data managed to pick one up on the way there, and
you get the tender moments. Worf cracks a joke. Beverly and Deanna are talking about how they had this sort of over the galaxy connection that was really touching. And Jean-Luc Picard, he has this proud dad moment, like, oh, we got the band back together.
Right.
Yeah, it sucks because I feel like somebody's going to die this season, and I kind of put my money on Riker, honestly, after having this touching scene. So I feel like this is the last time we're going to see them all together. They're all getting old anyways.
This is the Next Generation movie show we deserved as fans.
Yeah, because the Next Generation movies, even at their best, which was First Contact, as much as I love First Contact, and I love First Contact, it is a glorified action movie that focuses entirely too much on Picard and Data, which were the 2 most popular characters in the series. Through the entire movies, they didn't use anybody. Worf, they found less and less reasons to have him around. But like you said, this is it. This is the movie.
I like this freaking hippie Worf version, though.
Me too.
And he's sitting there with 4 pens, and I don't think he'd been in rank in the entire season so far. So he's a full captain in this section. Yeah, so 31.
it was addressed that I can't remember where it is, and maybe I can find it. But he was the one that took over the Enterprise E when Picard retired. So that's kind of cool, and that's probably why we see him in the 4 pips. And now he's what he calls a subcontractor or whatever. I mentioned prior to us doing this review that there was a connection that I made. The entire episode was homaging a movie I love dearly, and that's Air Force One. You even have the execution line, and she gives the communicator to somebody and says,
"Tell them."
She just executed Lieutenant Tabine.
Which is what Gary Oldman's character did in Air Force One.
Melanie Mitchell. And you?
Lieutenant Matthew Arliss Mira.
2.
Don't do this. No.
3.
Son. Picard has a son.
Let's just think about that one for a moment.
And then we'll start again.
Next time, I'll choose someone more important.
Come to the bridge. If not, we'll have to repeat this little exercise again and again and again.
And then Seven, when the entire bridge opens and it does the air sucking thing, she's get off my bridge. And I was like, they're doing Air Force One.
They absolutely were.
Get off my bridge.
Get off my plane.
Absolutely were. I mean, she even kind of did it in a Harrison Ford style rough voice.
Little rough voice. And probably, I know people hate using curse words in Star Trek. I am one of those people, but it was the best F-bomb by Vadic.
Fucking solid.
And I was like, yes, I am here for it. The episode and season continues to blue ball us with what Jack is or who Jack is. Right. What did you think of that?
When Troy gets on the ship, she immediately, and this is after Vadic's been and her crew's been dispelled. She's like, I sense evil, and then
darkness.
When they're sitting, darkness. When they're all sitting there, the crew's sitting around the table, the Next Generation crew, she says,
that boy, not in him, but around him, passing through him.
Yeah.
And she's like, it's a weak.
And a voice inside him, ancient and weak.
There's a weak force, but there's something around him. So she opts to give him some counseling.
Yeah.
The last scene is them sitting together and kind of going through it, and she gets in his head, and then they're sitting in the upside down corridor with the red door in the end, and that's how we end it. He's reaching out for the red door, but there's fire and steam coming out of there, which again, it's like screaming Pah Wraith.
Yeah. I think we're going into episode 9 and we still don't know, but I think the mention of like Deanna said, ancient, weak evil, the darkness, we see fire coming from the keyhole. To me, it feels like Pah Wraith. There is one thing keeping me back from that, and that's a comment that Vadic made.
You really should have gone.
You really shouldn't have come up.
How fitting it is for you to stay and witness this.
And I'm like, why Seven? Why her of all people? And it's because Seven, again, has this connection to the Borg. I just don't know if that's the case, because she makes it very specific that it was Seven.
How fitting it is for you to stay and witness this.
They really need to give up the ghost in the next episode.
Did you always know deep down what you are?
They really need to just explain what's happening, because you're hours away from Frontier Day, you're hours away from the big plot release, and you can't wait until the second half of the 10th episode to release that. One part we didn't discuss was Raffi, Worf, Riker, and Deanna were on a strike. They found Picard's body that they stole from Datestrom. They said that the only thing they'd done to it is remove the parts of his brain that had the aromatic syndrome in it.
Yeah.
Why are they taking that? What is the purpose of that?
So somebody commented, I don't know if I can find it, but I've seen a couple people talk about them trying to engineer their own form of super disease, which I feel like
a payback.
I feel like one, that would be payback. Two, that would be addressing the bad word that I won't say on YouTube because YouTube hates it, that has recently happened that we went through. And I feel like that would be kind of their way of doing it. I feel like that could be it. That's where I'm like, maybe it's like a Borg twist or whatever, but them engineering some sort of class destroying.
Yeah, weaponizing it maybe. Right? Yeah.
Overall, what would you rate Surrender?
I would give it an A-.
Yeah, I'm an A as well. I think it gets, the first time you're watching it, it's brutal. It's really tough to stomach what's going on. The execution scene's rough.
Yeah, hence the minus.
Hence the minus. Yeah, it's there, that horror scene. It feels very brutal in tone. And I noticed watching this, I was like, why, even though it's made me uncomfortable, which it's supposed to, why am I more okay with this than what I was in season 1 and season 2, where we had brutal scenes where people were getting their heads cut off, and we had that infamous Borg stab scene that I've shown a million times. And I figured out what it was. It's not our heroes doing it. Our heroes aren't being villains. They're not doing villainous traits of pinning down a guy and slowly stabbing him, or Seven kicking a Borg body. Yeah, Worf is the one that's killing people, but Worf's always been the one that's killed people. Yeah, he's a warrior.
He thought many times of sending each of one of them ahead of his enemies, but he was told that he was too passive aggressive.
I love that. And So I'm more okay with it here because the bad guys are supposed to be bad guys. We're not supposed to like them. And even though they tried to make Vadic relatable and give her a cause, which I'm completely okay with, she's still a bad guy. You shouldn't root for her. She's bad.
Tell them.
She just executed Lieutenant Devine.
I feel like this is a really good episode. Probably my favorite outside of just being so damn intense the first time you watch it. And I am so damn excited for what's to come. I just hope they start knocking out some of those questions.
Yes, let's hope. I got my fingers crossed.
As usual, thank you guys so much for support. If you guys want to see more, make sure you subscribe with the notification bell on. You guys have been so amazing and supportive. The last few videos have done so well, and we really appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you guys on the next one. Bye, Tots.
Bye, guys.